What's up everyone, Alex here. So 2012 is an interesting year because that's the year when Bravely Default came out, which was the game that basically proved to Square Enix that there are still fans of turn-based RPGs out there who will just buy these games because, well, we love them. And over the years, over the next several years, Square Enix would then put some effort to make some brand new turn-based games that we'd all be able to enjoy. Now, they've actually made enough games to warrant a list of 10 modern turn-based RPGs. Now, by modern, I'm talking about anything released after Bravely Default 1. And I just want to highlight some of them because I love turn-based games, and I know that you do too. Now, this list is actually going to contain both remasters and remakes, and the reason why I'm choosing to do this is because these remakes and remasters actually add a lot of really important quality of life features for newcomers to be able to understand what the basics are for the genre and be able to enjoy them as well. And of course, this is just another great excuse to talk about some classic games. I mean, I love the classics. That aside, let's check out some incredible turn-based Square Enix titles that have been released over the past several years. You know, sometimes you just want a game that's kind of like another game that you like, but with a fresh coat of paint. That's not to say that Bravely Default 2 has nothing of value outside of its likeness to Final Fantasy V, but I would be lying if I said that it wasn't a large part of its appeal. There's a very good reason why the job system has persisted to this day and has had several permutations, from Final Fantasy Tactics, Final Fantasy XIV, to even the chaos-filled Stranger of Paradise. Seeing the job system pop up in so many games from different genres tells me that there's a true yearning to see this idea explored to the fullest, even if that means returning to the well and doing even more turn-based RPGs. Bravely Default 2 simply decided to answer the call while also being its own charming experience in the process. And given how it's yet another follow-up to the game that brought Square Enix back to making turn-based games, it just makes sense that it doubles down on what made so many fans love the original. And speaking of job system, Octopath Traveler 2 certainly has that. And while the original did reintroduce the idea of anthologies as JRPGs, which go all the way back to the Saga series, Octopath Traveler 2 perfected its narrative storytelling by not only having more involved storytelling and character development, but also pairing two characters together in their own adventures while creating this meta-narrative that was tucked in the background that not many of us actually noticed the first time around, only for all of that to come back up, revealing a cabal of villains that completely upended our understanding of what we just played. And combining this great turn-based JRPG with amazing music by Yasunori Nishiki, and what you basically got is Backlog Battle's Game of the Year for not just myself, but to every single person that voted for its Game of the Year win last year. One type of game that actually has a ton of turn-based RPGs, and yes, I can hear your groans already, are gacha games. But NieR Reincarnation is the game that actually got me hooked into it for several months a few years ago. This is a game that I've always wanted to talk about with you all, but didn't really know how to approach it. And before anything else, yes, gacha is horrible, I would not advocate it to anybody, and yes, I know that NieR Reincarnation is going to be ending in the next few months, but hear me out. The reason why this is also following Octopath Traveler 2 is because NieR Reincarnation actually uses its weapon stories to build a brand new style of anthology, and NieR Reincarnation is actually divided into multiple main stories, with the weapon stories actually introducing brand new characters and villains. And to speak of its turn-based combat, I actually really do like it. Most people who play gacha games with turn-based combat just hit auto and just let the AI roll. But there were genuine moments in NieR Reincarnation that when I tried to actually control the characters, I was able to overcome many difficult obstacles, which really told me that there is something really special about this turn-based system. Alas, it's gacha and it's going away, but I'm hoping that NieR Reincarnation comes back, resurrected in some non-gacha form in the future. And we all know that Yoko Taro was involved in NieR Reincarnation, but he was also involved in making a trilogy of classic turn-based RPGs called Voice of Cards. Now, I'm saying trilogy with quotes because they're doing the Star Wars thing here where they actually numbered each of the Voice of Cards games, which kind of imply that there's other parts of the story that's not being told, and also implies that all three of these games are connected in some way. Many who look at Voice of Cards think, oh, it's gonna play like Hearthstone or Shadowverse, but in reality, it really is a true turn-based JRPG, complete with a fully voiced narration that give the impression that you're playing a tabletop RPG, but with JRPG-style gameplay. And much like Yoko Taro's other work, these stories are heartbreaking and have some really memorable characters, alongside heart-wrenching decisions that will tug at your heartstrings. I will go to bat for the Voice of Cards series because even though these three games are turn-based, all three of these games play differently from one another, and they are certainly worth exploring and checking out if you haven't. While never having quite the same cultural footprint in the West when compared to Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest is still rightfully respected as one of the grandfathers of the JRPG genre. Dragon Quest XI's knows and understands this cherished legacy and delivers on a fantastical journey. I often heard the franchise described as JRPG comfort food, and whenever I sit down and play any of the entries, I can't help but feel that this rings true. Even when playing the latest game in the series, it manages to inspire wistful feelings of nostalgia. I think this truly encapsulates the feeling of playing Dragon Quest XI. It reminds me of all the JRPGs I grew up with, but now with beautiful visuals that replicate the worlds my imagination conjured as a child. While some may take issue with the straightforward nature of the series, I'd argue that this is, in fact, one of its greatest strengths. Dragon Quest XI manages to be both a loving homage to everything we love about classic JRPGs, while also bringing them up to a modern standard. It doesn't forget where it came from or where it is in the present, a delicate tightrope this game walks, which is a feat to behold. The stacking mechanic in World of Final Fantasy really changed up the way monster taming RPGs are seen, combining the chibi looks that are inspired by the pixel art of classic Final Fantasies with modern designs from Tetsuya Nomura. World of Final Fantasy is a celebration of the entire series, wrapped up in this sugary saccharine package that at first was a little bit off-putting, but then I learned to really enjoy it and embrace it for what it is, thereby enjoying an adventure that involved many of my favorite heroes and villains in the series. This is kind of like one of those experiences that don't come around often. And yes, it does downplay a lot of the more serious storylines of the Final Fantasy series, but when you realize that that's not really the goal of this game and that it's supposed to be a celebration of everything cool and unique about Final Fantasy, that's when you start seeing some of its many ambitious ideals and goals. And that's not even mentioning all of the wonderful reorchestrations of classic Final Fantasy songs that can be found in World of Final Fantasy. Listen, if you've been put off by the look of the game, and if you're somehow able to look past that, you're gonna find an underappreciated classic that's worth the attention of hardcore Final Fantasy fans. It's not often that I find myself playing through a game more than once, as I'm the type of guy that typically moves on after hitting the credits. So it says a lot that I've completed Triangle Strategy twice, and I'm considering yet another playthrough. Whether I'm unlocking new characters, experiencing new battles and set pieces, or exploring dialogue and story branches I missed out on, the replay value truly goes above and beyond. That said, replay value doesn't mean much if the game itself isn't worth playing, but I wouldn't be contemplating my third playthrough if that wasn't the case. Simply put, Triangle Strategy manages to be great in every category that counts. From the beautiful HD 2D visuals that breathe life into the world and characters, the fun and strategic tactical RPG gameplay that also manages to be newcomer friendly, to the intriguing political storyline that deftly handles themes of moral grayness and dealing with the consequences of one's actions, it all comes together almost magically. This is one of those games that already has me excited for a possible sequel, because if they were able to do such a wonderful job the first time around, I can only imagine how much more refined the experience can truly be if the team were given the chance to do it again. That said, what we have is an already incredible experience and my game of the year of 2022. Live Alive has been a long time coming, especially from its original Super Famicom release, and Live Alive is now available on multiple platforms for everyone to play. To me, this is kind of like the prototypical Chrono Trigger, given that its director went on to direct that game later on, and of course, the very first Squaresoft game that Yoko Shimomura composed for. Live Alive combines turn-based gameplay with active time battle considerations without calling it active time battle. Basically, every time you made an action, whether you moved a character on a field or attacked somebody, it basically takes down this timer on all of the enemies on the board and allows them to kind of make their moves in response to your actions. So it's almost like this active game of chess. But best of all, this is also yet another game that Square Enix made that plays around with anthologies, as it has multiple playable characters at the start that converge together towards the end to defeat an ultimate bad guy. Live Alive is also one of those games that tries to twist the JRPG genre into forms that one might not think is possible, adding stealth elements, a literal story that almost parallels the first Alien movie, as well as fighting games and other game genres. Live Alive is truly imaginative, and if you haven't played it yet, you really should check it out. Before anything else, I just have to say that I truly love the Final Fantasy series. Whether we're talking about the latest entries or the foundational ones that established the franchise, Final Fantasy is something profoundly special to me. That's why it warms my heart to play the Pixel remasters, which are wonderful iterations of these classic titles. They may not look 100% like their original NES or SNES versions, but they still carry the same spirit of what made those original titles so iconic. I believe the intention was to find a way to make the games feel like their original incarnations, while also touching up on some of their rougher elements so that newcomers can more easily enjoy their time. While I haven't had a chance to play through all of the titles all over again, I can tell you that playing through Final Fantasy IV, 5, and 6 in particular was absolutely invigorating. I could truly feel the love poured into these remasters in order to make them the definitive way for fans of all sorts to enjoy. While I'm sure some will swear by their old NES and SNES carts, I can tell you that for me, at least, my next replay of any of these games will be through the Pixel remasters, as these are a wonderful way to experience these legendary classics. I'm saving one of the best for last, and that's gonna be Tactics Ogre Reborn. Now, if you're a fan of Tactics Ogre, you know that this game has been remade multiple times, with its systems just completely ripped apart and brought back together multiple times, whether it's the PlayStation re-release, the PSP release, or this brand new Reborn version. Now, I should point out that Yasumi Matsuno actually worked on this remake. Because while the reaction to the graphics are pretty much mixed across the board, admittedly, I personally loved some of the changes that they made that were very smart and actually made the game even more challenging in a good way. I don't think I've ever known of any game where its original creator comes in, rips apart its systems, puts it back together again, and it's still just as cohesive as the previous iterations of the game. Yes, there's going to be problems for every sort of system that gets tinkered with over time, but what Reborn allows us to do is to appreciate Tactics Ogre in a very different way than any of its previous releases, creating a sort of new identity for a series that's existed for such a long time. And I think that that's really the brilliance of Tactics Ogre Reborn. Now, I will warn you that this is a freaking hard game, so if you're new to the series, be prepared for some pain. But for anybody who's played the series for a long time, they'll tell you straight up that this is one of the best tactical RPGs of all time. And that, my friends, are just 10, actually more, turn-based JRPGs that Square Enix has made over the past several years. Now, I know that there are a lot more turn-based games that Square Enix has made, but I want to hear what you think and which games should have been on this list. So post your thoughts and recommendations in the comments below so we can talk about it. Thank you very much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.